Susan, it is so good to see you and so good to have you join us today. I'm very excited. I am Nina Boone. I lead our D&I practice at Korn Ferry, but I'm also wonderfully a New York Women's Forum member. And I am so excited to be here with you today. So I want you to introduce yourself and talk about why we're here, because we're excited to talk to you.
Well, Nina, thank you so much. And thank you to the Women's Forum for this tremendous opportunity. I joined a couple of months ago, and I cannot even begin to tell you the amount of outpouring of love and welcomeness, if that is so word. And when I was offered this opportunity to come and talk a bit about my background, my new book, of course I was like, I'm there, of course. So anyhow, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to meet you.
It is a pleasure to meet you too. I'm so excited we could get together. Well, listen, we are going to talk to you today and obviously grill you with all kinds of questions, but we want to know about you. We want to know about, and also, and I think you'll find this from the Women's Forum and just women in general. We also, with someone like you and your experience and knowledge, we want some advice, right? We always want to hear your thoughts on how we can do things better. So let's get started, because I do want to hear how you came up with your concept for McPherson Strategies. So how did it start? What happened? Tell us about it.
Sure. Well, I have to be honest with you. I am an accidental entrepreneur. Okay. This was not in the plan. I didn't have lifelong learning. I had worked in corporate America for many, many years. And in between 2010 and 2013, I was working in a consulting firm where there was an exodus of talent. And for any of us who have ever worked in consulting, when the talent leaves, it's a warning signal, meaning you either have to move on or figure something out. So I was 48 at the time and the primary breadwinner in my household. And it was all of a sudden, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Two organizations, Girl Rising and Global Citizen Year, both said to me confidentially, Susan, if you leave, we will hire you as a consultant for a few months. So it gave me a runway because I was terrified. I had had a paycheck since I was 15.
Yeah.
So I had never gone the kind of the individual solo entrepreneur. And they said that on a Friday. I started on a Monday and put my little shingle up because I was terrified they were going to change their mind.
Yeah.
So that was 8 years ago. So I wish I had this grand master plan. And then I joked that I named it McPherson Strategies because I thought it was going to last 6 months. And it is my ex-husband's name. We divorced in 2003. Great guy. So, no ill will there. But I would have come up with something a little more kind of, strategic. But what the business is, and I'm very, very fortunate because the world has finally caught up with this notion that social impact, diversity and inclusion, making sustainability top priority for companies is all of a sudden now prolific everywhere, a must-have. And 8 years ago, it was starting to become much kind of in vogue, dare I say, but now it absolutely is a must. So we have benefited from that. And now we have to hire our 12th employee. So
I love that. You know what? We've talked some about motivation. And I think, we've been really reevaluating over the last, 15, 18 months, what motivates us. So talk about that transition between again, corporate America. I'm a corporate America person. So many of the women out there are. And so what motivated you then and what changed in terms of your motivations today? Because obviously you were ahead of the game here.
Well, I had been having one foot out the door in social impact since my early 20s. I had always been volunteering. I had always been the go-to person at whatever organization I was working for as the person who would be able to advise on, what gala should the company buy a table at? What cause should the company get behind? And then in 2005, through an organization that I had joined when I moved to New York City, which was in 2003, with the Business Council for Peace, BPeace, which is still around. And its focus then was all about helping women entrepreneurs scale their business in regions of conflict. Afghanistan, Rwanda, El Salvador. So in 2005, I went to Afghanistan and for 2 weeks worked with women entrepreneurs. That was the first time I actually saw business truly being a force for good, not talking about it, but actually being.
Yeah.
You know, these women were utilizing all of their business acumen, their networks, their contacts, their skills. And that kind of solidified in my mind that for the next, bazillion years, I wanted to be helping companies find that North Star of how they can be step up to be better in the world.
Right.
And then, of course, that evolved, but it's always been through the lens of communications, because I believe that no matter all the good you're doing, if you are not talking about it in a way that is strategic, meaningful, in a way that's effectively heard, I don't want to say there's no point in doing it, because there is, but the point is you're not going to gain all the benefits that we know happens.
Yeah. I think it's always amazing to see that. And I do think we as women see people helping and doing that, and yet we're in this space. And so you talk about being an accidental entrepreneur, but it's like, I think about the sacrifice that you must have made as you very scarily stepped out of corporate America and into, especially when you said you started the very next day because you were so fearful. So talk about sacrifice, and not only what you were thinking when you made that move, but even today, what does that mean to be able to be that entrepreneur? And because there are sacrifices that you can.
Yes. But I honestly think, and maybe I'm overly optimistic here, but now I'm 56. I've been doing this for 8 years. There is something really empowering about owning your own company, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, it is still to this day terrifying, and especially in consulting, where you can only predict so far, right? Like you only have visibility into so many months. So there is that constant fear. But I will say that being able to create your own path is exceptionally rewarding. And then also really truly doing inspiring work. I mean, when I think about just this morning before our meeting, working with our client Leadership Now, which is all about helping business become protect democracy right now, because we know in various states there are laws that are being enacted that are going to really harm and prevent certain classes of citizens from being able to easily vote. And if we can exercise business's power to help change that, then I feel we are being effective.
So how do you?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sacrifice. I mean, if I look back, I was always career driven. Did that affect my marriage? Did that affect other relationships? Probably. But we make choices, right? I mean, I think that's natural.
Yeah, I hope that some of those sacrifices are not things that women of the future, and maybe my daughter's age, who's 36, have to put up with. You know what I mean? Yeah. So when and again, because I too am an entrepreneur, and along with the day job, because I have not had the courage to quit my day job yet. So and I go between being rolled up in a ball and so fearful to really activated, and so it's oh my God, it's so frightening. But who supports you? Because I have so many people I can call and that help me unwind from that, that ball on the floor. So who has been your support, and how do you build that for yourself as you step out?
Well, I will be honest with you. My connections have been everything. I would not even be on this planet if it were not for the people that I have had the fortunate experience of having surrounding me. My late mother taught me early on, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And she didn't like in terms of like people's status. She meant the people that are going to actually be there and show up. And one of the reasons I wrote my book, The Lost Art of Connecting, is this whole notion that it is our connections, but it's not our network, it's our communities. It's the people that show up in the good time and bad. And I am probably on the borderline of being neurotic, that I stay in touch with people so much. I mean, people joke that I'm like Velcro, so that like once you're in my life, you're kind of stuck. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, but I have found that by showing up, people have shown up for me. And, I could name off litanies of people. I know one member of the forum, Ruth Ann Harnish, has been a huge North Star for me over the years, both on a personal and a professional side.
Mm-hmm.
Has been a coach for many years. And, I actually interviewed her in the book, and what she helped me understand was this notion of being very direct. It's something I failed at for a long time.
Yeah.
It was maybe out of my own insecurities. So, I have various people that I go to for various support kind of systems, right? Like that we all do, but I would be nowhere if it wasn't for my connections and relationships.
Yeah, I'm going to build on that, and I know we planned some of this, but I'm going to go. I've got it because it's like all of these create such wonderful questions for me. So I do think in a time of COVID, there is a difference, and you just pointed it out, between a network and connections. So, and I have felt it certainly. So, what has happened to us, and what are those differences, and where do they show up?
Sure. Well, I am not anti-networking by any stretch of the imagination, and we need to network. But if you notice, I didn't call the book The Lost Art of Networking.
Right.
Okay. I fervently believe, and if you look up the Merriam-Webster Dictionary of networking, it is very transactional, and it's all about me. Okay. What can I get? What can people give me? How can I get away with stuff? What I believe is, if we lead with how can we be helpful? How can we help others? Then the help will come. And this is not about not taking the oxygen mask first. So I'm not suggesting we give up our own sense of how we help ourselves. But I think, if anything, through the 18 months, and I dare I say, I don't know if we're out of the woods yet, right?
Yeah.
But and many people have suffered in just unbelievable loss, both emotional, financial, health, etc. But I have to believe intentionality is so much more in our bailiwick now. And when we connect with people, when we meet people, when we reconnect with people, we are being more intentional. Because I think for a fleeting moment of 18 months, we had that, we experienced what it was like to lose connection. Yeah. Lose the ability to see each other, to hug each other, and all the things. So I think going forward, and I could be overly optimistic here, but I do believe when we are at events, whether they're virtual or not, I do believe we are not going to be looking over the shoulder of the person we're talking to, looking for the better, shinier object or the shinier person. I mean, that's my hope. But I do think this notion of what we lost during these 18 months will, at least for the foreseeable future, be very front of mind.
I think about the book and the connections and the way you talk about that sense of community. I know, through actually the IWF Fellows program that I was part of, I was introduced to the concept of a reciprocity ring, right? And so that's what it feels like. It feels like, through the book, you are encouraging us to develop that reciprocity ring. And so tell us what a reciprocity ring is, how those connections, because that's truly connection and giving back. And I'm adding multiple questions here, but do we as women tend to think we don't have enough to give back, and so we don't reach for that? What do you think about that?
Well, I think with us, and in the first part of the book, there's 3 sections, Gather, Ask, Do. And the Gather section is very, very much about self-reflection and understanding what are your hopes and dreams in the next 4 years, 4 months, 4 weeks. But while you're doing that kind of deep thinking, what are the ways you can be helpful to others? I like to call them your chief differentiating factors, your secret sauces, your superpowers. And this is where your close community can come in handy. Because many of us, myself included, wake up in the morning often with imposter syndrome. And I'm like, what am I good at? What am I? And sometimes you need people around you, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your children, whether it's your friends, your dog, you name it. But sometimes you can get that feedback from them by asking, what am I good at? Because sometimes we just get so caught up in ourselves that we forget. But I think it is really important for us to determine what are our secret sauces, so that when we go out in the world, that we can be leading with that. How can we be helpful knowing what we are good at doing? And I guarantee those secret sauces are going to ebb and flow throughout our lives.
Right.
I do believe sometimes we're trying to find that big thing, when in actuality, it's little things. It maybe you happen to be an expert in New York City restaurants. Okay. I mean, I'm just tossing this,
Yeah.
and you can make great recommendations. Maybe you have, you're a birder, and you can be recommending where to find the best birds in Central Park. I'm being very silly, but I think sometimes we're thinking, oh, we have to figure out whether we're a rocket scientist or not. And I gather that's a little bit top of mind right now.
So top of mind, Susan, so top of mind, with the cowboy hat,
Exactly.
I just think it's, so this is because I'm going to say, I know being in a group of people, constantly talking to people, and I'll use that, the other word of constantly networking, feeling like I have to do that. It's exhausting. So what exhausts you? Because this is clearly so energizing for you to think about this. So what exhausts you through this whole thing, owning your own business, writing a book, and I know you're doing 1,000 other things. So, and what do you do about exhaustion?
Well, I'm not very good about it because I had 2 hospitalizations in May. So,
wow.
Yeah. And, I'm just going to be completely transparent. After that, and then my dog also had major surgery, and she's been away from me. About a month ago, my hair started falling out in massive clumps. And I know this probably isn't something that the Women's Forum members really want to hear about. But I have to tell you, it has been the scariest thing I've ever gone through.
So, wake up call, right? A wake up call.
Yeah. I mean, it is after you've had physical or mental trauma, and obviously the anesthesia, all the things. But the stress of the book, the stress of I have been solely alone for 15 months before the book launch. And as you can probably tell, I'm an extrovert.
Yeah.
And I don't have children, I don't have parents, I don't have a partner. So just that alone was hard. I mean, I would never say it was as hard as anybody who lost livelihoods and lost loved ones, but it very much was a wake-up call, and still is a wake-up call. So I have to say, Nina, I don't know if I can answer that question. I'm learning, I'm doing, I'm doing my best to meditate. I'm seeking help. I'm asking for help, which is something that, again, as I lost my mother early to a horrible hotel fire, and because of that, I became a survivor. Right? I mean, I think it's natural.
Wow.
So it's like I can get things done. I don't need help, but if anything, I'm hoping a year from now I will look back on this and I'll be like, you really, yes, it was hard, but you listened to your own advice about reaching out to others.
I was going to say, I think of the gather, ask, do, and I was like, what is that hard part about the ask for women? What makes that so hard for us?
Because I think a lot of it goes back to our lack of confidence and our fear of no, right? And a lot of, and in the ask section, I talk a bit about tools we can use when we make asks to make it easier for the respondent.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm not trying to, make it always easy for the other person, but if you're making an ask, I want to give you all the tools in your toolbox so you can get your answers and you can get the support you need. And to give you an example, always ask for options. Don't make that one big ask, because I liken it to sometimes, years ago in our teens when you were dating, that one ask, right? You were like, whoa, let's hold off. And the other thing is ask along the way, right? Get people have vested interest in you, so that if you do make the big ask, they've already been involved.
Totally makes sense. I mean, I think it will continue to be something that women will struggle with, because I think we give instead of take. And I think we see an ask as a take, right? And it's not, it's a give too.
The other, I did a ton of research, and inevitably, this is something we have to remind ourselves. People want to be helpful. So if we don't ask, we are not giving them that opportunity to be helpful. So, that assumption that, it's a bother. No. I think the other thing to think about is, we're always afraid to ask people for introductions to others because, they own those other people. I believe I don't own anyone, right? And to me, when I make introductions, I mean, obviously I do the kind of permission first of the other, but to me, I feel like I'm helping that person expand their kind of world by introducing. So going with these assumptions that people don't want to meet other people or they're too busy to meet other people, I think you and I both know that is what makes life magical.
Right.
Right? Think of the doors that open when you meet people that you don't know. Think of the opportunities. I mean, there could be a lottery ticket on the other side of that door.
I think, I've recently had one of these where I did an ask and have gotten so much in return from an individual. And even she noted that she felt our paths crossed for a reason. So I do think that happens, right? So I'm going to take that thread and go further. So as you think about McPherson Strategies, how are you helping, women entrepreneurs, especially in the tech space? How is that going? And again, because obviously this connections, your book is obviously connected to that. Use that word. So talk about that.
Well, McPherson Strategies, obviously something that I think it has come back to help the firm. About 10 years ago, I started to become an angel investor, but I only invested in women-led startups. And being, as we know that the vast majority of dollars in venture capital go to white men.
Yeah.
And I decided, I don't have unlimited resources, but the resources I did have, I thought, one, to be able to help women realize their dreams and scale could be very similar to how I would approach philanthropy. But also it would help me learn how they ran their businesses. Right. So, and in some ways get a seat at the table. So I always made that if I'm going to write a check, I want to offer more than just money, right? I want to be able to make introductions. I want to be able to help connect with media coverage, potentially introduce them to other investors. So by doing that, I have expanded the pool that could potentially then come and recommend our business, potentially even clients. I mean, generally speaking, we don't work with startups. So when you think about the classic company that receives angel investing, they tend to be, small and very startup. But many cases they're acquired or they're bought, and it leads to other opportunities. But it really has been both a opportunity for me to be helpful, but also learning. Because as I mentioned earlier, I didn't know how to be an entrepreneur. And there was no rule book. I still to this day cannot for the life of me excel at Excel. So, right, which I hate to say it.
Wow, I get it. Totally get it. You can Google that now. That's what my daughter says to me. I ask her how to do something. Google it or YouTube it, right? What are the others?
I know.
Oh my gosh. So there are women out there who are, again, thinking about doing what you did, or because I think all of us are thinking about better ways of doing things, because I do think we always think, as my mom says, there's a better mousetrap for everything, right? As the world has evolved. So how do you think about that transition from full-time job, full-time income? And again, you were the primary breadwinner. I know I'm a primary breadwinner. It's fearful for me. How do we think about that transition? Planning, in just emotional planning? How do we do that?
You mean instead of on a Friday, starting on
that could be your advice too. I don't know. Maybe that's it. You just dive off the board, Susan. I don't
take a vacation.
Well, I wondered that the minute you said I went to work on Monday. I'm like, she didn't take any time off.
Because again, I didn't think it was going to be anything. Right? This is where building your community first, if at all possible.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I don't want to diminish, those in their 20s and 30s that are very excited to start their own. Because if you have that thirst, if you have that passion, then go for it.
Yeah.
But in the consulting world, I can honestly say that having a ginormous community, the overlap really allowed me, when I launched, to put out a note saying, hi, I'm hanging a shingle. Here's what I'm looking for. And the people came back, the work came in spades. And in 8 years later, 95% of our business has been inbound.
Oh, wow.
Which is, And I can only say that is because in my 20s, in my 30s, in a good part of my 40s, I was taking those meetings. I was introducing people. I was making connections. I was volunteering at nonprofit organizations. Again, meeting people who were not like me, so that my bubble was somewhat burst. So my advice is, if you have the desire to do this, make connecting a top priority. Okay. And I think sometimes, especially for young adults coming out of college, this notion of, well, why is this important? And I point to the 95% of the business that has come in, because everyone you meet is an intro to something else, someone else, some idea you didn't know. And things are going to be vitally, vitally important for whatever you do, whether you run a business or you're a successful employee.
Yeah, I love that. Should we tell people? Because I think about, whenever I was thinking about my, online retail startup, I just told everybody that because I was really proud that I had an idea for myself, which is crazy, but it's like, told everyone. And so, because the gathering, if you will, of my connections took a long time, but at least I told people. Do you think women are telling? And if they're not, is it something you talk about, even if you have that corporate job? Does it put you at risk?
Well, it's been a while since I've been at a corporation. And so obviously I don't want to put anybody's full-time job at risk if they're parking it on the side. But I do believe once they are at a point where they can publicly talk about it, shout it on the roofs, use all your channels. And I think sometimes we overlook like our closest community, like our neighbors, or even the shops or the places we do business, because we're thinking, oh, they can't help us because they're outside the field. They could have a sibling or a cousin that could be a potential client. So I think it's like, don't have blinders on, because this is back to that, you don't know what you don't know. And to me, be strategic about it. Obviously, I'm not suggesting you go up to the top of the Empire State Building and get a bully pole, popcorn or whatever it's called. But I think sometimes we miss opportunities. And unlike 30 years ago when I started out professionally, where you had the yellow pages and the Encyclopedia Britannica to research or find things or tell things, you had your local newspaper and your local radio station. You have all the channels now. So I do think it's becoming conversive in a few of the platforms that make most sense for what you are wanting to do. You don't have to be on all of them, but we know that certain ones are effective for certain things.
You talked about, work in your 20s and 30s and into your 40s that then prepared you for all of this, right? And I think that, the Gather As Do speaks to all of that. But if you had to limit it to a single or one or two life experiences that literally gave you the courage to step away on a Friday and take it up on a Monday, no vacation, still can't believe that. What were those things that were so impactful to you?
I wish I could think of,
just one or two.
I mentioned my mom. I mean, I think losing a parent at such a young age in such a horrific way gave me this sense. And even though it come across as I was so scared, but it was also like, what do I have to lose? She was 56, which is the age I am now. And at 48, I was kind of like, well, if I don't do it now, when am I going to have the opportunity to do it? And so, and also I witnessed her. She went back to work when I was in first grade in the early 70s, which was very unusual for mom. And she rose very, very quickly. She did PR for PBS, for public, which of course, as a child, I had no idea what she was doing. And really didn't even get a sense probably until I was 18 or 19. But then, seeing what she was able to accomplish while still being a wife and a mother and doing everything she could. When she would go on trips, she'd fill the freezer with, casseroles so my father could, figure it out, right? I mean, sadly, that probably still exists in many households. But anyhow, I think that gave me the kind of like, wait, she did all of that. I can start this. So I think that would be what I would look to.
Whenever you went to Afghanistan and you looked at certainly countries very different than America and the opportunities and even the way women live and the resources that they have, how did that do you come away with sort of a of an entitled view that, like, if they can do it, listen, ladies, get busy. I mean, it has to affect you. I mean, I've never done anything like that, but it has to.
Well, one of the programs on is the U.S. arm of the UN High Commission for Refugees. For the last 6 years, except this past year, of course, I have traveled to refugee hotspots around the world. Everywhere from the Syrian border to the border of Venezuela, where Venezuelans are fleeing, coming into Colombia, to refugee camps in Kenya and Uganda. And to give you an example, I met in Kenya at the Kakuma refugee camp a woman who had literally walked 300 miles while 7 months pregnant, carrying her 3-year-old and 1-year-old on her side.
Yeah.
Okay. That, I mean, I've never had children, but that put the whole barefoot and pregnant kind of thing in my, it was blown away. And the reason I tell that story is resiliency. When you see people who have fled everything and anything for survival, but then to watch how they then carry on their lives, whether they're in a refugee camp or living in a new city and trying to pick up their livelihood and support their family, we can do anything. The human spirit is alive and well. And, there are 88 million displaced people on this planet. So when I go to that place where I'm like, oh, I do go there. I think about the people that I've met. I think about what I've seen, and I think how grounding that is.
Yeah.
So, this is back to this. If we can ever find time, and if we have time, volunteer and service is such a powerful gift we can give ourselves, let alone the people we're helping.
Right.
But what we learn and what we can then bring back to whatever work we do is so empowering.
It's amazing. So I'm going to wrap this up by doing this. So we have gathered, because there are all kinds of people, our entire women's forum is gathered around this conversation and is enjoying it. So I'm going to let you do an ask. And then I'm going to ask our members to do the do. So I can't walk away with that, because I think connections, I almost feel like this gather, ask, do with connections is like a blanket we can wrap around ourselves that literally compels us and propels us forward. So I want you to do an ask, because this is a group of women that will do. They are gathered and we will do. So what is your ask for us?
I would love to ask everyone to start leading with how can they be helpful to others.
Wow.
Okay? I
thought you'd do something easy, Susan. I thought you would be like sort of a softball. No, you're going to go big. You're going big.
Well, here's the thing. I have a funny feeling that the vast majority of the members do have that methodology, that mindset.
Absolutely.
But I think as we are in this really unique moment in history, and I almost go so far as say it's the Great Reset. So let's kind of pivot our minds when we start walking into those rooms again. As much as we tend to go there where we, I believe me, I do the same thing. It's like, what am I going to walk away with, right? We're human.
Yeah.
But if we can shift that mindset and think, because all of us have so much to give. And I don't mean writing checks. I don't mean 90 hours of volunteering time.
Right.
Just be an introduction to someone else. It could just be a little bit of knowledge that you could spew is probably the wrong word, but share with others. So I think that would, and then if you are so inclined and you want to buy my book, that's an easier.
I love that.
Buy it. You can just tell somebody to buy it.
That's part of the do. I think that's part of the do. We have to support each other. So this is what I'm going to end on this. It's like our membership again is I'm going to do a little bit of an ask for you. So that supports this book. So I do think if we don't know how to network, we need to learn how to connect instead of, because I agree with, I love the fact that you have amplified that ability to connect and do that. And so as we gather, I hope we do ask, and I hope we do and create those connections. So Susan, final thoughts from you. I always like to leave it with you. So it's been such a pleasure today, but final thoughts to the group.
Well, you are a beautiful interviewer you are, and I am heartened to meet you, and I hope to meet you in real life, Nina. And I thank you for your graciousness. But I also just want to say to the organization and the people, thank you for welcoming me. It has been such a joy at a very difficult time. I haven't shared that publicly on any of these. So I felt safe enough to do so. And that says a lot about how this membership has made me feel. So I'm very excited to meet people in real life in the coming year, and also do whatever I can to support members, the organization, and wishing everyone a wonderful, wonderful August.
All right. Well, on that, we are going to close. Susan, it's been a pleasure. And again, ladies, we look forward to seeing everyone in person.